So everybody, our next poet is Jill Kelly. Is it
Corin, yeah.
Corin? Is the author of The Work of the Body that was published by Dos Madres in 2015, and While the Water Rises Around Us, which was done by Finishing Line 2011. She's the recipient of an Indiana Arts Commission Individual Artist Grant and MC's Poetry Night at Village Lights Bookstore. She teaches poetry, literature, and writing at Ivy Tech Community College, where she was awarded the 2019 President's Award for Excellence in Instruction, and she lives with her family in Madison, Indiana. Please join me in welcoming Jill.
Thanks. I'm gonna do a mom-themed poem set. This is my most recent book, and it's called Though the Word is a Lie, and it's dedicated to my mother, Anne Rosemary York Kelly. And today is actually the anniversary of her death, 8 years ago. And this first poem that I'm going to read is called 1 Year in Wildflowers, and it was written on the first anniversary of her death. Well, actually, it wasn't written. It was in anticipation of. So it was written on July 22nd, 2015. My mother died in the time of the Iron Reed. Taking out the compost in her last days, I was surrounded by fierce magentas, too bright almost for the eye. They towered over me, those weeds, and the ones I tried to rip up out of the flower bed, right under her window, the ones closest to her bed, the bed Dad moved into the living room so she could be surrounded by life as her own waned, earned their title. They did not want to let go. Finally, I had to bring my own implements, the long-handled and the short, sharp, two-pronged iron tongues to bite the root below the surface and finally fell that iron flower. After she died came the blue mist flowers, Conoclinium celestinum, just as the iron reed turned brown. Low and soft, also called blue boneset, good for butterflies. Since then, I have counted not months, but snows, then buds, then blooms, harbinger of spring, spring beauty, trout lily, May apple, wild phlox, wild rose, wild daisy, heliopsis, jewel weed, black-eyed Susan, and now the iron weed is tall again, tight fists of not yet, reaching to the sky, waiting to release fierce points of magenta across the scatter of a green field when the time is right. I thought everybody knew the names of all the wildflowers, but I went walking with my friend and she didn't know any of them, so I know, and my mom and my Aunt Peggy, they know all the names, and I just thought it was a thing that everybody knew, so. And speaking of things that I thought everybody knew, which one is one? Go. Invoking, yeah, like, because they seem like sort of a spell to me, you know? And I've always been fascinated by the different concepts of time in different cultures, and we're a very chronological culture of time, but most cultures are more circular in their time, like seasons and days and months. So, wildflowers. And along with that, herbs are another thing that my mom used to introduce me to on our nature walks. And part of she had a tumor, and it took away her sense of smell. And I think of all our senses, it's the one we maybe most take for granted. Like, we recognize if you lose your sight, that's a disability, or if you lose your sense of hearing, that's like, we need to accommodate for that. But smell sort of seems maybe disposable, but it wasn't for her. And then I think now with COVID, I wrote this way pre-COVID, but a lot of people have experienced losing their sense of smell, and I did recently in May, and it just made me think of like how it was for her, of this big blank of sensory input where it was so rich before. So this one is called, it's from my other book, The Work of the Body, and it's called Nose. It's for her, and her middle name is Rosemary, so that's an herb, so just kind of a little footnote. Bless you. That's okay. Float walking home, early June rain, musky wet earth aroma, voice lost, music making done, but music still ringing in my ears when a new smell greets my nose, familiar, full, sweet. Eyes follow scent, up, to shiny wet leaves, full white blossoms. Hello, Magnolia. I knew it was you before I saw you. Thought maybe Magnolia recognizes me too, by my own olfactory signature, part smoke sweat, part lime milk, or a particular wave of heat, perhaps a secret shimmer that only tree can see. My mother, a lover of lemon balm, basil, sweet Annie, rosemary, her fingers crushed each leaf for me, releasing a codex of complex fragrance just below my nose, but not for pleasure alone, for the knowing too, a way to find friends in hollowed out spaces. And now, for her, nothing. No tang of lemon balm, no sharp oregano, no stink of gasoline to raise a fumy finger of alarm. If blind, then braille. Fingertips would translate dot to thought, the hill and valley of a lover's faith to heft and shadow. If deaf, hands could sign a manual ballet of meaning, poetry, literally in motion. But who can report on the air, lilac thick, and who translate this language lost? Smoke, moss, river, pain. How will we ever know each other again? Thank you. This one is about motherhood in general and how it's really hard. And I feel a kinship with my mother, of course, but with all mothers. And I think sometimes we lose the fact that we are connected to each other, because if we remembered that all the time, it would be almost unbearable. Like Peggy and I were talking on the way here, that just we shield each other from the unbearable pain of connection with other humans. And so this one is called The Ache. And there's a little epigraph, Camden, New Jersey. Reading the latest mother-on-child atrocity in the newspaper, I ache to pray. But what is there to do? I ache to pray. What is there to do but get down on my knees and pray to a God I can no longer imagine? He used to look like my uncle, bearded and bespectacled. Now I realize that uncle had no children of his own. As a child, I lay in bed listening for his voice on the other end of the line. Now I read the paper, hear Siobhan Thomas call the 911 operator. Something has happened to my child. She also means something has happened to me. I have done something so unspeakable that only prayer or the edge of a knife can answer, and the line is dead. I wish I could broadcast some beacon, some balm for a world in which a mother is pushed to that edge. She was only 33. She had another son, now 18, a brother to this baby, now dead. Camden is just across the Delaware from Philadelphia, but it is a long way from the city of brotherly love. I am Siobhan Thomas. Her child is my child. This is what I want to tell you. Quit gawking, get back in your cars. The line might be dead, but pray anyway. She is you too. We are all our brother's keepers. Her child's head is in the freezer. Siobhan's body is on the floor. This is not a metaphor. Something has happened to us. Thanks. This is another one about my mom, and it's called Winged Victory, and it's about the shortcomings of poetry in the face of everything. In my uncle's lakeside studio, there's a painting he calls Winged Woman. Carnival in Dominica. She smiles, resting her hands on her wings, at ease. Her pants are the bluest blue. Her face, the richest brown. One hip is cocked to the side, a picture of mirth. Later, bobbing in the lake, I watch my mother walk the pier. I know she is self-conscious, even though it's new, and she calls it her mermaid suit. She tugs at the top of it, willing it to cover new breasts, and no, they are not implants, more subtraction than addition. The steroids to reduce the swelling in her brain cause the swelling in the rest of her. Last October, they opened her skull to take out what they thought was the last of the tumor, but those trickster cells had found their way to the frontal lobe, clinging there for dear life. Thwarted, the surgeons closed her up, sealing the incision with 4 dozen staples. After a few more adjustments, she is ready, and I watch as she pushes off the dock. Finally airborne, she hangs there, forever it seems, leaping like a stag, arms back, wings spread, and I can imagine her short hair lifting as she ascends. Of course, this poem has failed. I should have taken a picture instead, but how could I have known the moment she'd take flight? Thank you. This one, I wrote a lot of these poems as I was biking up a hill that I call Hatcher Canyon, and the repetitive cycles of cycling, literally, were, I thought, a good metaphor for grief. Just gotta keep doing it. You go up, and you come back down, and then you go up, and you come back down. So this one is called Up the Hill Again, and it was written January 2nd, 2015. Ice crystals nest in each small pock of road. Near the top of the trail, a sheet of ice covers asphalt. Lie down. My warmth would melt the blanket, as my mother's would not. Her body's last gifts, flame and ash. You don't have to clap. You can just think. And sort of on the same theme of taking flight, this one's called When Abstract Isn't. I really like Mary Ruefle is a poet I admire, and she talks about how you can take things that are literal and make them figurative, or you can take things that are figurative and make them literal, and you get to do that when you're a poet. So there's a little epigraph. After 100 years of jumping, one koi finally reached the top of the waterfall and was transformed into a golden dragon, the image of power and strength. It's from a Chinese legend. It is my mother's birthday, and I am taking her out to lunch after her radiation appointment. On the way to Cincinnati, I ask, "How did you sleep? Did you have any dreams?" No answer. Again, I ask, "Did you dream?" Again, a long silence. And then I dreamed of a determined woman on standby. My mother is the koi, swimming against the current of the yellow river. She has reached the base of the waterfall. I imagine it as Arrowhead, the falls behind our farm, where the spring-fed creek tumbles over the point of a cliff down to a staircase of moss-draped limestone layers. So many hikes began and ended there, down the canyon and back up. When you reached Arrowhead, you knew you were close to home. At my sister's wedding, I asked my mother, "Are you hungry?" "No," she says, every word a long, long trip. "I am not hungry. I am just determined. Today I starve for as many syllables. Sentences start but do not finish. Nouns are scarce. And you will think I am making this up, but yesterday, as I held my mother upright, supporting all her weight, trying to figure out how to get her from wheelchair to commode without hurting her, I glanced at the windowsill, and there on a scrap of paper in her own handwriting, "The only thing to hold on to in life is each other. Together we manage an almost graceful transition." Are those tears leaking from her eyes, or are her eyes watering from the pressure building behind them? Tumor, glaucoma, residual effects of radiation? We will never know. I lean to catch her words, deduce her meaning. "Too bad," she says. "It's too bad." Below the water's skin, she lifts her face to the sky, bends her body, leaps toward the dragon she has already become. This is going to be my last poem. It's called Diving into the Canyon, March 17th, 2015. And it's, the little epigraph is from Albert Brumley's song, "One Bright Morning I'll Fly Away." Crave canyon depths, lean over the falls, tiptoe until you fall but fly, caught in the wing of some forgotten angel. I used to dream of flying, didn't we all? Brumley must have, flying away from all that cotton on the wing of a daydream. The flight of my dreams was not the flight of the eagle, more a low, slow flight of the robin gliding to land. Always I'd realize I was flying and freeze, trying to stay aloft, sinking, though, slower and slowly to the ground. Now, if I dreamed you into flightfulness, I'd say swim it, the air, stroke along the leaf bed floor. I'd join you, then you'd disappear, sliced like paper, a tree transformed, cut from the line of the sky. I'd realize this time too, but never stop, hovering just above the earth, listening for the hum of you. Thank you. And thanks for having me.